Hi there. Lately, I've had a lot of success making an apple pie in two parts. Normally, you just put your apples into the pie shell and bake it all together. But the last few times, I've stir-fried the apples in a cast iron pan, added the spices, and cooked it down until it all becomes a thick, viscous, gooey pie filling. And this has given a really good pie filling that doesn't have any big empty spaces under the crust or a lot of liquid. And then all you do is add your cooked pie filling to the pie shell, cover it, and bake it until the pie shell is done. It's a can't-fail method for a perfect apple pie, and doing it this way gave me my best apple pie ever. And I'm very glad to share it with you.
This method does have one disadvantage. It requires more apples than a typical apple pie. That's because cooking the apples in advance causes them to shrink and take up less space in the pie, so we're compensating for that by using more apples. I love using this apple corer and peeler when making an apple pie. It's fun to use and it does a great job. Once the apples are peeled, we cut each apple and place it into a colander and sprinkle a tablespoon of sugar over each apple as we put it in. This will cause the apples to drain and release some of their liquid, which helps to get a pie that isn't runny. We put the apples into the refrigerator for about an hour, and now we can work on making the pie crust. Of course, you can use a store-bought pie crust with no problem, but I prefer making my own crust because I get to add special ingredients like cardamom to flavor the crust. Now we mix the dry ingredients together and throw in 2 sticks of butter. And when it's all mixed in, we add the secret ingredient, booze. We're not using water in the crust, especially so it won't form gluten and make a rock-hard crust. Instead, just have patience, and in a few minutes the alcohol will bring it all together into a thick pie dough. And we roll the dough together in a ball, then split it into 2 balls. We then wrap them up and place them in the fridge to chill for an hour. And here's what we're doing a little different. We start heating up a large cast iron pan. A 12-inch skillet would work fine, though here we're using a huge cast iron wok. And while the wok is heating up, we take out a 10-inch cast iron skillet, which is what we'll be baking the pie in. Grease the inside of the pan with shortening, and then lay out a large sheet of parchment paper and grease one side of the paper with shortening. Now we press the parchment paper into the pan with the greased side of the paper up. This will help the parchment paper adhere to the pan, while the top side of the paper is already greased and ready to put in the pie crust. Now we reserve the liquid drained from the apples, add a little oil to the wok, and start stir-frying the apples so they'll be completely cooked when we put them into the pie. The apples start shrinking quickly, and after a few minutes we can add some extra ingredients to give the apples that special apple pie flavor and also to help the pie bake. And that includes lemon juice, more of the apple liquor, apple cider vinegar, more white sugar, kosher salt, brown sugar, some butter, and cornstarch to help thicken the pie filling. After a few more minutes of stir frying, we then add a teaspoon of nutmeg and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And we keep stir frying until the liquid thickens and we have a thick and gooey syrup. instead of runny liquid. Now we know the pie will be good both inside and out. At this point, we can start heating up the oven, and now we can take out the pie dough and roll it out until it's big enough to fit into the pan. And we press it into the pan. If any parts of the crust have tears or they have gaps, we can patch those with other pieces of dough. And our pie shell is ready. Now all we have to do is scoop out the pie filling into the shell. And now for the final part. Roll out the other ball of dough, and this will be the top crust for the pie. We place it on top and press the pie dough all around the edges to make a crust all around the pie. And for the final topping, we add the reserved apple juice and an egg to a bowl and stir it together. And now we can give the top of the pie an apple egg wash. And give it all one final topping of sugar. Cut some slits into the pie to allow steam to escape, and now the pie goes into the oven. And the best part is we only have to bake it until the crust is fully cooked, because the inside of the pie is already done. And here is the finished apple pie. Since we only had to bake the crust, we didn't have to cover it and protect it from being burned. The hard part will be waiting at least 2 hours before cutting it open, because I could just stand here and smell it all night. But once the pie is cooled down, we can take it out of the pan and place it onto a serving tray. And this is why we baked it with parchment paper. The sides of the pie are also brown and not undercooked. And we can now serve up a slice of apple heaven. The pie filling is solid and not runny, and when topped with a scoop of vanilla ice cream, we have something close to apple pie perfection.
I'm proud of how this pie turned out, especially because it was so easy to make. The crust wasn't burned, but still fully baked, and the pie filling had just the right amount of sweetness and a bit of tartness to it. This is indeed something I'd like to ask you to try, and that's why I call it a magical apple pie. Where's the magic? Well, wait until you see the looks on your kids' faces when you serve this pie. There's the magic. Thank you for watching.